Does not, the UN should act. If the UN does not act, the United States will. That's what the President has said. Did he make the case? We begin our conversation today with a very special guest who will be with us for the next half hour, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam. Pat?
Mr. Farrakhan, it's good seeing you restored to health. I know you had very grave problems just a couple of years back. First question, if Congress authorizes the President to go to war and the UN demands that Saddam open up to inspectors and he does not, would the United States be involved in a just war if we launched a war on Iraq to destroy those weapons of mass destruction?
I don't think that the United States would be involved in a just war. The United States has prided itself in not ever being an aggressor, but responding to aggression against itself. 1 year ago, aggressors came to this country and perpetrated a horrific act upon the United States of America. It is proper that our president respond to that act. But now, 6 months after, we don't hear any more about Osama bin Laden. What happened to him? All of a sudden now, the focus has changed to Saddam Hussein.
In the absence of an attack on United States forces by Saddam Hussein or Iraq, you believe that any attack, even authorized by Congress and the UN, on Saddam Hussein and Iraq would be an act of aggression by the United States?
I do not think that the UN would authorize an attack on Iraq unless they mandated that he let inspectors in, and he refused to do that. But the United States position is clear. Whether he does it or does it not, the President of the United States said he's committed to a regime change in Iraq. And I think that that is highly improper for the head of the greatest and only remaining superpower.
Well, Minister, even I think you could not deny, as the President detailed yesterday, that Saddam Hussein has violated every one of 16 resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council over the last decade. Are you just saying that the United Nations should sit there helpless and let him get away with thumbing his nose at the organization?
Ariel Sharon thumbed his nose at the president when the president said he wanted all Israeli forces out of the West Bank. Ariel Sharon stayed there as long as it took him to do what he intended to do. A former U.S. senator on questioning on television yesterday said half of the people that the president was addressing had at one time or another violated some U.S. resolution. What happened to Resolution 242 and those resolutions that traded land for peace? Is Saddam the only one that has violated UN resolutions? And suppose there is in the Security Council a vote, and that vote is vetoed by one of the 5 permanent members, will then America thumb its nose at the world and say, I'm going to go it alone, making America an international criminal?
Well, surely I would grant your point that Saddam Hussein is not the only one who may have violated a UN resolution, but I think you can put him in a category by himself. Certainly that's what President Bush feels, and he told the United Nations yesterday, sort of detailing some of the crimes of Saddam Hussein. I'd like you to listen, please, to the President. Just a quick quote from yesterday's speech to the UN General Assembly.
Tens of thousands of political opponents and ordinary citizens have been subjected to arbitrary arrest and imprisonment, summary execution, and torture by beating and burning, electric shock, starvation, mutilation, and rape.
Now, I'm sure you can't condemn the others for those kinds of tortures, those kinds of attacks. I mean, it sounds like you're defending this thug, Minister.
I cannot defend Saddam Hussein on a personal level. I don't know him that well. But the very things that our president is saying that Saddam is guilty of, we're guilty of the same. He has detained Arab Americans without due process, and he has just said that they can be held incommunicado, summary executions?
Beating, burning, electric shock, starvation,
Do you
mutilation,
think that
rape?
America's hands are innocent of this kind of behavior toward people within the United States as well as those whom she perceives as her enemies? America, in the words of Jesus, if you are without sin, you can cast the first stone. But I don't think President Bush can cast the first stone at Iraq. It seems to me he's the one that is out of step with the whole world community and is drunk with the power of the United States of America.
Mr. Farrakhan, you have said Mr. Bush is behaving like the leader of a lynch mob. You have just said the United States would be an international criminal if we acted in the absence or against a veto in the Security Council. If the UN authorizes inspectors and says we can use force if the inspectors are rejected, and Saddam rejects the inspectors, do we then have a moral right to go in and destroy that regime and its weapons of mass destruction?
No, we do not. Because there is no proof, no evidence that this man has weapons of mass destruction. Even this commission that came out saying if he had fissile material
They said
within
he has
6
no
months.
nuclear weapons, Minister. They said he had biological and chemical weapons, 95% of which were destroyed by '98. They may have more. They do not have a nuclear weapon, almost surely, and he needs fissile material. But he does have the chemical and biological weapons he allegedly used against the Kurds in northern Iraq.
Now, sir, there is still no evidence that this president has put before the United Nations. One thing you can say about President Kennedy, when he knew that he had the Cubans dead to right, he came to the United Nations and put up before the world the proof that there were weapons of mass destruction 90 miles away from our shore, and the world backed him. The world is looking at President Bush, and I respectfully say, Mr. Buchanan, how then, if America does it by herself, goes to war with Iraq, how does Iran feel? How does Libya feel? How does North Korea feel? How does China feel when there are those in America who feel that China is a threat tomorrow? So we'll trigger another arms race in the world.
Minister Farrakhan, we ask you to take a quick break. We'll take a break here, and when we come back, we continue our conversation with Minister Farrakhan. We're going to ask him to react to comments by the Reverend Franklin Graham that Islam is an evil and wicked religion. Buchanan and Press. More coming up on MSNBC.
And it's I believe, a very evil and very wicked religion.
Welcome back. Our guest is Minister Louis Farrakhan. Minister Farrakhan, that was Franklin Graham, and he's probably referring to these many surahs you see that are quoted all on the internet and in books that have to do with the Quran. And it talks about how Muslims should deal with infidels. Cut off their heads and cut off the tips of their fingers. You are to seize them and put them to death wherever you find them. Kill them wherever you find them. Seek out the enemies of Islam relentlessly. Is there not some truth in what Franklin Graham says, that this Islam can be a very, very bloody religion when it comes to confronting its what they call infidels?
It seems to me that religion has been a useful tool in the hands of the wicked to create mischief and bloodshed. All of the religions, the main monotheistic religions, are religions that deal with peace as the root of these religions. But if you go to the Torah, when David, I think it was David, was told to go into a certain place and kill, no, it was Saul, pardon me, that was told to go into a certain city, kill men, women, children, kill the flock, don't take any spoils. And Saul did a little of that. And then the prophet Samuel came to Saul and told him that he disobeyed a commandment of God to kill. And he said, well, these were my soldiers, we just took a little. And then Saul told him, Samuel said, obedience is better than sacrifice. And then ultimately, Saul was replaced by David. So you find in Christian scripture and in Christian history, in Jewish scripture and in Jewish history, and in Islamic scripture and in Islamic history, bloodshed, tremendous bloodshed. But that does not mean that God is wicked, nor does it mean that the religion is evil, but these religions give guidance in how to deal with those who treacherously deal with the believers.
But quickly, Minister, and I don't believe Islam is a violent religion, but if it is not, and if these people clearly did not act properly in the name of Allah to do these 9/11 attacks, why didn't more Muslim preachers come forward, mullahs, and say, we condemn this, we apologize for these attacks? Why were they so silent after 9/11?
You know, I think that Muslim leaders all over the world condemned these acts of killing innocent people as vile and despicable. And I want to say to Franklin Graham, if he is listening, you know, sir, that whenever you find a group of persons within a religion acting out violence and evil, then you find that that religion is not responsible for the acts of a few, as the Christian religion is not responsible for the wickedness that Christians have imposed on people all over the earth.
Okay, we'll be back with more with Louis Farrakhan coming up.
So our guest, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Pat?
Minister Farrakhan, you have condemned as an outrage, an atrocity, what happened on 9/11 to America. Would you equally condemn the suicide bombers of Hamas who blow up civilians in pizza parlors in Jerusalem and bar mitzvahs in northern Israel? In other words, the ones that blow up civilians only. Are they going to go to hell in the eyes of Islam?
I'm not the judge of who goes to heaven or hell. I hope I'll be in the right place myself. But seriously speaking, to kill innocent people is wrong. And certainly we who are not Palestinians can condemn that as wrong. But what I most condemn are the conditions that produce that kind of depravity, where one has no more sense that their life is worth anything, that they would strap a bomb on themselves and use themselves as a weapon to bring pain to those who occupy their land. This is from their point of view. So I would hope that America, who has the power to be a strong and honest broker in this peace process, would help to get this peace process back on track and be an honest broker so that this kind of violence will never see the light of day again.
Minister, a question about American politics. This year, Congressman Earl Hilliard, who's a critic of Israel, was defeated in his primary in Alabama. Then most recently, Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, another critic of Israel, was defeated in her primary in Georgia. You went down there, spoke on behalf of Cynthia McKinney. When she lost her father said, if you want to blame it on anybody, you blame it on JEWS. Do you agree that American Jews were responsible for their defeat?
I think the pro-Israeli lobby did nothing immoral or wrong in using their power to unseat those that they felt were not in the best interests of Israel. That is their right to do so according to the American law and politics. However, I think that a pro-Israeli lobby that is so blinded by their own self-interest that they care not for the interest of others, that is a danger, not just to moderate Jews, that's a danger to the United States of America.
That's got to be the last word. Thank you, Minister Louis Farrakhan, for joining us. We invite you back here on Buchanan and Press. And when we come back, a new report on Iraq will continue on Buchanan.
Sure. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, Sister Viola Plummer.
Brothers and sisters, at this point, in terms of the continuation of the youth program, I've asked Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to speak to us. He has indeed a commitment that says he must leave us at the latest 2 o'clock. It is 15 minutes to 2. I don't know enough words. I don't know how to introduce Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan. So what I'll say to you, as African people, let us introduce Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, we give Him praise and thanks for His goodness and His mercy. We thank Him for Moses and the Torah. We thank Him for Jesus and the Gospel. We thank Him for Muhammad and the Quran. But as a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I could never thank Allah enough for all of the great ones that came before us, that paved the way for us, that made it possible for us to be standing here today. And that is Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, the Honorable Marcus Garvey. We are honoring him today because he is the father of the movement of black people toward Africa and Africa's redemption. I thank Allah for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I greet all of you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. First, let me say to all of the organizers of this historic meeting today in Washington, Sister Viola Plummer, Dr. Conrad Worrell, all of the members of NCOBRA, and all of those who fight for reparations, thank you for such a beautiful day. To all of you that are present, although I can't be with you long, we can just say a few words because you already know why you're here. We are and have become a nation within a nation, but a nation within a nation that is suppressed, that does not enjoy true freedom, justice, and equality from the other nation. We have a just demand to put before America and to put before the world. What are we due for what suffering was put upon our fathers and on us to this very day? What are we due? Let's add it up. Yesterday in the newspapers, those who suffered the horror of 9/11 last year sued the government of Saudi Arabia and Sudan and royal family members for trillions of dollars for 3,000 unjustified deaths. Well, that's pretty good. They want to bankrupt governments for their hurt and their pain. Well, they are setting some kind of precedent, because if that can be entertained in the U.S. courts for 3,000 deaths, then what should we say for the 50 million that died in the Middle Passage and those that continue to die on the streets of America? There is something owed to the descendants of slaves. We are not crazy for gathering here in Washington, a city laid out by a black man, in front of a Capitol building that was built by slaves, appealing to a White House that was built by slave labor. It seems that America owes black people, Native Americans, a lot for what we have endured. So what is demanded of us today is that black America must unite on the principle of reparations. We cannot accept a cash payment because a fool and his money will soon part. Something has happened to our heads that needs repair. Something has happened to our bodies that needs repair. Something has happened to our pocketbooks that need repair. So reparations is a proper theme around which all black America should and must unite. Even though this gathering may not be million, yet we represent those that could not be here, those that didn't even know that we were gathering here. And there are millions in America who will join the movement for reparations. As a nation within a nation, we need land as a basis of economic and political independence. We cannot settle for some little jive token. We need millions of acres of land that black people can build and do for ourselves. We're not begging white people. We're not asking white people. We are demanding what is justly ours. And what is ours? We need payment for 310 years of chattel slavery. We need payment for the destruction of our minds, the robbery of our language, our culture, our history, our religion, our God, our self-dignity, our self-worth. There has to be some justice done for us, since we have fought in every war for a freedom that we don't enjoy. And the president is getting ready to send black and brown and poor white to fight in Iraq, somebody that never called us nigger, never bothered us, never took from us. Our fight is not in Iraq. Our fight is in America, on the streets of America, for justice for every black man, woman, and child that has died unjustly under the yoke of oppression. And so as I leave you, I thank the organizers, and I want you to know that the Nation of Islam stands foursquare with all who struggle for justice, not only here, but in Africa. The land question in Africa is a reality. We must not back a democracy bill that's passed in Congress to put a yoke around Mugabe for taking back land that was stolen. They had the nerve to ask the Africans in negotiation to buy back their own land. That is some kind of gall. But Zimbabwe said, no, we're not going to deprive you of all that you stole. But we want enough for our population that justifies the war that we fought for liberation. Now, America and England have said that Mugabe's a criminal, but he was a good man as long as white folk could have the benefit of what they stole. But when he started taking back what rightfully belonged to Zimbabwe and what they fought for and won, then he became a bad man. So if he's a bad man for wanting what is rightly his, you know that we have an uphill road to fight for what rightly is ours. I don't think we need to fight in the white man's army. I think all the soldiers need to come home and say no more. We fought in the Civil War. We fought in the War of 1812. We fought in the First World War. We fought in the Second World War. We fought in the Korean conflict. We fought in Vietnam. And we're still victims of racial profiling. What do we have to fight for overseas? Our fight is in America against the recalcitrance of white supremacy. And we shall win this fight because it's a just struggle. God is with the oppressed, and he will back us in our struggle. All we have to do is unite, stay together, and work as hard as we can, not only for ourselves and our generation, but there are babies out here on the mall that need a better future. There are children unborn that we must struggle for so that they won't have the struggle in their lifetime that has been presented to us in our lifetime. To complete my 15 minutes, I have asked my assistant, one of the sons of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a young man full of the Spirit, to fight in the way of his father for the liberation of our people. And you know, as we get older, the enemy is always searching. Since they can't corrupt the elder, they want to see if they can get to the younger. But what we want them to know is that what was in the father, what was in Malcolm, what is in me is in millions. What was in Marcus Garvey is in millions. We will overcome, no question about it. But those of us whose hair is gray or touched with Clairol, we have to prepare a place for the young, bring them up by our side, train them, educate them, then step back and let the young go forward. Because as elders, we're not expected to do the same thing that we've done for 30 and 40 years. In another few months, I'll be 70 years old or young. And I think I got 70 more years of hard work in front of me. But I want you to hear this young man as I ask you to excuse me. I'm on my way down to Atlanta to see what we can do to help our sister, Cynthia McKinney. And so, with your kind permission, continue to have a great day, a peaceful day, a productive day, and may God grant to each of you a safe return to your homes and your families. And let's get busy and work for reparations as justice for 450 years of injustice. Minister